Welcome to this episode of Tomo, where I detail the outrageous making of an Apple device charging station, with docks for iPhone, Apple Watch, and AirPods. This project is not endorsed by Apple, but is most certainly inspired by the Apple way. It's a term I just made up, but it refers to something quite real in the context of the design of their devices. While Apple's corporate history is kind of a mashup of Game of Thrones and Scandal, their design history is much easier to describe. I would divide it into 4 distinct eras: early days, Valley of Death, comeback, and master of the universe. The early days were marked by experimentation and innovation. No one knew yet what a computer looked like, so Apple was one of a few outfits that invented the future, trying on for size, disk drives, personal computers, mice, and groundbreaking ads based on dystopian novels. Industrial design agencies like Frog were brought on, creating devices you might call functionalist, with a palette of gray and beige. The Valley of Death era, marked by desperation and turmoil, kicked off around 1986. Apple fired Steve Jobs, and a succession of bean counter CEOs pushed through a bunch of duds like the Tape Backup 40 SC and Performa. Apple's design ethos was often, can we injection mold enough copies of this box in time for the next product launch? Product ideas were thrown against the wall in a Cambrian explosion, generating Apple species I bet you've never heard of: gaming systems, TVs, printers, cameras. The comeback era begins around 1997 when Steve Jobs strong-armed his way back into Apple. His first move was to hire a toilet designer from Middle England and put him in charge of the product that would make or break Apple Computer. Luckily for Apple, the iMac G3 changed the game forever. Consumers never noticed that experts called it underpowered, girly, and only lacking a Barbie logo. Yes, the times were different. It sold like crazy, and for the very reasons it was panned, its curves were enchanting. The candy-like colors looked tasty, and the sense of whimsy invited you to explore. If you're searching for bad things on the internet in your high school library, you don't need 8 gigs of RAM. You just need a mouse with one button. Anyway, the name of the toilet designer who designed this was Johny Ive. Johnny, along with Steve Jobs, in what might be considered a fit of madness, ditched their winning formula and pulled a full about-face. They adopted a mid-century modern, minimalist style that looks like it was pulled straight from Braun's 1972 catalog. Now, by the mid-noughts, when competitors' design departments were sleeping on the job or playing catch-up with the first iMac, Apple products, now including new icons like the iPod and MacBook, had already begun the rush to strip away all excess. Apple's 4th and last design era, master of the universe, begins around 2007 when the first iPhone dropped. Flush with hundreds of billions, Apple brought their design philosophy to its logical extreme. Any design move that might be considered non-essential was eliminated. Personality, whimsy, they went out the window. Apple was become a luxury goods company, their trademark, sleek metal boxes. But I suspect rather than being an active design decision, this change was brought about by a fundamental shift in how the world works. The only companies that survive nowadays are those whose products reflect the imperatives of the globalized economy: efficiency, hyperscale, data-driven workflows. I can hear the ghost of Andy Warhol laughing now. If you want character, emotion, thrill, find them inside the box, slap them on your case. While this blandness might be inevitable, it doesn't stop me from being nostalgic for the comeback era, when the Apple way was playfulness and delight. So, while designing my charging stations, I kept top of mind those 2 things: playfulness and delight. My design process was divided into 4 stages: research, chin-scratching, exploration, and prototyping. In the research phase, I studied iPhones, AirPods, and watches, taking note of their dimensions plus the charging stations made for them. I took note of case thicknesses, charging cable flexibility, and wireless charger requirements. I pored over my collection of inspiring product photos and analyzed all the 3D printed charging stations out there already. My friends were forced to explain how and where their phones were used before bedtime. The job of my chin-scratching phase was to take advantage of all these insights. I compiled a list of constraints. So the basics, like it should handle all iPhone sizes from the tiny iPhone 12 mini to the huge Pro Max, but also fit non-Apple smartphones. And then more complex requirements, like the device must be insertable into the charger with one hand, the cables must be routed internally and exit invisibly, and each dock must work as an individual unit as well as part of a complete charging station. The third stage, exploration, is when the designing finally began. Hand sketching, rough form finding, and 3D printing sketches to get a sense of scale. As the explorations gained fidelity, I increasingly relied on the lines of the iMac G3 and the spirit of Mike Kelly, a multimedia artist whose candor sculptures, with their glowing crystal forms, impart a sense of sublime mystery. My final stage, prototyping, was the most involved. Friends and concerned strangers tested out my initial 3D prints. I made repeat visits to my local Apple store, ensuring that charging cables and the products themselves slotted in as they should. I refined my geometry print by print. This is my CAD graveyard showing all the iterations, and here's my actual graveyard. I found it ironic that a phone housing you can design in 5 seconds required dozens of hours in CAD to perfect. That said, here's the final product. Phone charger in Emerald PLA Plus, a Seafoam Silk PLA for the charge whatever you want dock. AirPods in transparent filament. The watch charger in stained wood. I am particularly pleased with the phone dock. It amplifies music surprisingly well, especially on the low end, slots in nicely, and can be printed with zero support material. Mix and match them to taste. But what does my most important user think?
Well, I like the color. The form is evocative of a spaceship. It's really nice, especially this.
Would you ever use it? If you like these charging stations, you can get the print files for them on the Tomo website, linked here and in the description. As always, if you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the Tomo channel down below. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next time.